On to the August 16th meeting of the Wakefield Board of Appeals. Reminder to everyone that's participating that the meeting is being recorded. It will be available on the town's website in a couple of days. We're going to start with a roll call of members. Jim McBain.
Here.
Dave Hatfield.
Here.
Joe Pride. I see Joe. Kasumi Humphreys.
Yeah.
Greg McIntosh.
Here.
Chip Tarbell.
Evan. Evan.
We'll announce Chip when he comes, and we do know that member Mickey Feely will not be here. So I'm going to ask Joe to read the legal notice.
You can hear me, right? All right, consistent with the governor's orders, extended certain provision of the open meeting law, every effort we made to allow the public to view and or listen to the meeting in real time. If you do not have a camera or microphone on your computer, you may use the following dial-in number: 1-301-715-8592, meeting ID 894-6480-1573, passcode 160163. Please only use dial-in or computer, not both, as audio feedback will distort the meeting. This meeting will be audio and video recorded. In compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, this location is accessible to people with disabilities. Wakefield provides reasonable accommodations and or language assistance free of charge upon request. If you are a person with a disability and require information or materials in an alternate format, or if you require any other accommodation, please contact the town's disability coordinator, William Renault, town engineer, at 781-246-6308 as far in advance of the event as possible. Every effort will be made to grant your requests. Advance notification will enable the town to make reasonable arrangements to remove an accessibility barrier for you. 1, continued hearings. 2, 24-5 Lindsay DeTono application for a special permit under Article 6. Section 190-31C1 of the Wakefield zoning bylaw to widen an existing driveway. The property is shown as map 14, lot parcels D16 of the assessors map, and is located at 211 Wall Street. Board of Appeals.
Great, thank you, Joe. Got a few. We have a few letters asking for continuance, so as our practice, I'm going to read those into the record. And folks that are here for those cases, please know it will be continued. The first one is from attorney Brian McGrail, dated August 15th, regarding the Granite Family Trust LLC, 314, 330, and 336 Salem Street, Wakefield, case numbers 2343, 2344, 2345, 2346, 2347, 2348, 2349, and 2350. Mr. Chair, please continue this matter until your meeting on September 13th, 2023. And then we're still in the process of reviewing drainage with William Renault, the town engineer. The current extension for the board to render and or file a decision is through October 31st, 2023. Thank you for your consideration.
I move that we continue this hearing.
Seconded to September 13th.
Yep, regular voting members and Greg then. Dave,
Yes.
Chip,
Yes. Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and Greg.
Yes.
So that hearing is continued. The next one is from attorney Brian McGrail, dated August 15th, regarding Mira LLC and Sky Group Investments LLC, 1 Audubon Road, Wakefield, case numbers 2366, 2367, and 2368. Dear Mr. Chair, please continue this matter until your meeting on September 13th, 2023. We're still in the process of compiling additional sign information, and the client is not available for tonight's meeting. The current extension for the board to render and or file a decision is through October 31st, 2023.
Hey, feel free, I forgot.
And for the record, remember Chip Tarbell is now with us. So I move that we continue this matter to the September 13th hearing.
Seconded.
All those in favor, Dave,
Aye.
Joe,
Yes.
Jim,
yes,
Chip,
Yes,
and I vote yes as well. So that is continued to September 13th. Next letter is from Attorney Brian McGrail regarding Northeast Warehouse Boston LLC, 3 Melbourne Street, case numbers 2377, 2378, and 2379. Dear Mr. Chair, please continue this matter until your meeting on September 13th, 2023, and that we are still in the process of working on items requested by the board, and our architect is recently back from overseas. The current extension for the board to render or file a decision is through September 30th, 2023. Please let this letter confirm that the applicant has agreed to extend the time for the board to render and or file any decisions until October 31st, 2023. Thank you for your consideration.
Mr. Chair, I move that we continue this matter to the September 13th hearing and accept the applicant's request to extend the time for the board to render or file decision to October 31st, 2023.
Seconded.
Okay, regular voting members and Greg, Dave,
Yes,
Joe,
Yes,
Chip,
yes,
Jim,
yes,
and Greg,
yes,
and I vote yes as well. So that is continued to the 13th. Next letter from Attorney Brian McGrail, dated August 15th. Viseth Chum and Tasting Boba LLC, 8 Albion Street, case number 2388. Dear Mr. Chair, please continue this matter until your meeting on September 13th, 2023, and that we are still working on revised sign design.
Mr. Chair, I move that we continue this matter till the September 13th hearing.
seconded.
Okay, regular voting members, Dave,
Yes,
Joe,
Yes,
Chip,
yes,
Jim,
yes,
and I vote yes. So those matters are continued. Pleasure of the board. Do you want to take up the telecom matters, or do you want to just continue? We only have 3 continuances. Any preference?
I just assume do it in a regular order, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Anybody with objections to that?
No.
that's fine.
I just suggested it, didn't know when Chip would be joining. We could usually get those out of the way, but that's fine.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll start with Kingman Block LLC, case 2314. 2315, 2316, 2317, located 369, 371 Main Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, good evening. For the record, Attorney Brian McGrail representing the applicant Kingman Block LLC. The property, as you said, is at 369, 371 Main Street. We're able to make some progress on this since the last meeting in July, notwithstanding vacations, etc. And what I would respectfully like to accomplish tonight is to show you what we deem to be the final architectural plans and materials plan. And we have agreed to an easement location with the town for the Albion Cultural Exchange Building and also for Wakefield Municipal Gas and Lights. I'd like to highlight those areas for you. Then I also would like, I guess before I go there, I'd like to report that just today, the Traffic Advisory Committee issued their memo, which you haven't had a chance to read probably, but it's a clean memo, about as clean as you can get. You know, that's kind of what we want to accomplish, assuming the architectural plans look good. The site plan easements to you. Bill Renault issued a memo to the board yesterday. And we've got a couple of things that let me take a step back. He did not issue a memo. He sent our team an email that he wants some things updated on the site plan. He wants us to reconcile our plan with the improvements that have occurred on Albion Street. He wants us to extend the improvements on the sidewalk on Chestnut and do some changes for handicap accessibility on the sidewalk, which we're happy to do. So before the next meeting, our engineer, I've already talked to him, he should have that done by the end of the week. What our goal would be is to get the blessing on the architectural and then get a direction for O&M in draft conditions, and potentially if the board was ready, we potentially could close this out at the next meeting if the plans can be updated. So with that said, Mr. Chair, I've got the architectural plans that I'd like to bring up. And
Please do. And Dave, while he's doing that, just on these continuances that where you were chair for most of the time, feel free to step right in. I'm sure you have more copious notes on what was next and so forth.
Okay,
so I'm gonna be, I'm not gonna rehash this whole thing because we've probably done that in a number of times. Calsa Design is here. Dan from Calsa Design is here, our architect. So if there are any questions, he's here and online and ready, willing, and able to answer the questions. So obviously the board is familiar with the site. This is a site plan. I'm going to get to that in a little bit. So I'm going to kind of go through that because I'll show you that on the actual site plan that they're included in the architectural plans. And this, I'll get to detail on the easement, as I mentioned, when I get to the site plan. Floor plans haven't changed. As you know, we have the units in the upper story of the bank building with a connector to the new building. So I'm going to go and feel free. I know I sent these to you on Friday. If you need to see anything that you want to go over, let me know. We've got our details on our lighting, which are reflected on the plans, which the board has seen. These are kind of our elevation drawings, which Mr. McBain has reviewed. I'm sure he'll comment accordingly if he needs to. And these are the colored elevations. And then I'm going to get into, we've adjusted the connector to the building as the board have requested to make it the same type of material so it doesn't stick out with the windows that match in there. I think Greg had pointed this out at the last meeting. We've made a note here that the existing vending window to be modified or removed with the future restaurant renovation. Greg astutely pointed that out, that there's going to be some changes for the restaurant that will be addressed in the condition with a reservation to the board, but we just pointed that out on the plan that that's likely to go. These are the elevations. And then these are more kind of detailed. And there's been some changes out here. That's what Bill Renault wants us to modify in the site plan, as you know, with the Albion street improvements. And I think this is a sidewalk area that Bill wants carried down. You can see it, which we were fine with. And then these were the materials. Shrink this down a little bit. And I'll stay here for a minute, just so you can see if you haven't had a chance to look at this stuff yet. And there will obviously be a mock-up panel condition. We made a note here that this is where the connector would go and that this is probably going to be an opening to accommodate some deliveries for the restaurant in the future. That's kind of the, and this is the spec on the brick and the materials. That was the board that was delivered to the town hall. So I know you've seen this a bunch of times. I'm just kind of trying to get this plan over the goal line in anticipation of the next meeting. And so we're happy to answer any questions or hear comments that the board has. And again, Dan is here from CalSA if there's any specific questions.
The only comment I have, and Jim, you can weigh in as whether it's even important or not. Brian, if you can go back up to the materials page in sandstone.
Right here, Chip.
Yeah, normally we don't go with or similar.
Yeah.
Right, you're proposing one material, and if it's changing, then we need to know about it.
Mhm.
Because our determination is similar and their determination is similar may be different.
And they can be changed, as we know in the past, we've dealt with it in a minor modification way. But
Right.
we want to know about it. Well, we don't want to live that big a blank check, basically, for
Yep.
somebody else to make that decision in the end.
Because we like the aristocrat, the aristocrat, we like that color.
Yeah, it might be some of the manufacturer basically that they buy out, but it has a matching cousin to it by that other manufacturer. So if that's the case, then it probably will go right through us eventually.
Okay. Dan, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so can you revise the plan just to take that off?
Yes,
Great, and don't panic because as the board said, as long as something matches historically, they're very cooperative in that regard. So,
sounds good.
Brian, I don't see anything, and correct me where we are with signage at the entry. I know I can see it in the rendering, but I don't think there's any blow up on size, color, or anything like that, or unless you're gonna deal with this later.
good point. And, Dan, do you have any comments on that, on the signage?
The last that we heard from the signage was that the board wanted it to be on the exterior, wanted to be up front before we had a recess. That's the only comment we heard. So far, what we're showing on the rendering is what we had planned.
I think we'll just reserve it, Jim. Let's just.
It doesn't give us any size information or anything like that. I mean, certainly you can see it on the rendering when you blow it up, but it's not detailed enough in the
No.
appearance, basically. North Avenue project, basically, a few years back, when we dealt with signage on that, I'd like to deal with it at that. The other thing is that there's gonna be some sort of signage inside the parking garage, which is wide open, so we should know what's happening there as well.
As well as at the entrance of the parking lot and,
Yes,
right. And is that there gonna be anything on the front building or, because I think there is an entrance to the second floor on the front, right? Correct? By the elevator?
Yeah,
yeah,
So there's gonna be, so I think, Brian, just table
yeah,
signage for now until
Yeah.
you're ready to present the total package.
yeah.
And maybe condition it that we approve signage and that it perhaps comes later.
Yes.
that what-
Yeah, just you
Makes
reserve on the, as you have in the past.
As we usually do.
all signage.
Mr. Chair, I had a note through you. Again, this got continued several times, so my notes go back a few meetings, but there was a note some time ago that said, add a note to the plan that all vents will be through the roof and not the walls. So
Yeah,
did
that's
that get
been
updated in
done.
the plans? Do we already cover
Yes,
that?
if you look at this elevation, it says it.
Right there. Yep, right here. See it, Dave? Can you see it?
Yeah, I just got everyone's pictures in my way, but yes, I do. Yes. All right.
Okay.
No, that's fine. It was a note from several meetings ago. I just wanted to make sure we got it covered. Cool.
Right there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. That's exactly what I was talking about, so appreciate it. Anything else?
Yeah, I just one quick question, Brian. I think you said, but I want to confirm for that vending window with the language that's on here, on the plan, and also with the, I think you said, some window in the back might be modified for deliveries later.
Yeah,
Will there be a condition that because the language almost makes it seem like, hey, you can modify it how you want to later, but just like with the or similar comment that Chip made, that should make sure it calls out that stays with us.
yeah, we'll put that in the conditions, Greg, that basically it's anticipated it may be modified for the restaurant with the approval of the board.
What was that guy? Yeah, that's what it was. That John?
Did you get that, Greg?
Yep, good to go.
Yeah, I would also suggest that we just say if there's any changes to the, as a condition, if there's any changes to the front building that are needed, it becomes a minor modification based on their tenant or their use.
Well, don't say it. We talked about this last time. I think that I wouldn't say it's a minor modification. If there's any changes, it's a minor modification. Then you're just baking in a minor modification. We talked about that this becomes one project anyways. So if they make any changes to any part of that front building, it has to come back to us anyways. I guess my concern was with the wording on the plans saying, hey, this is going to be modified. Someone might think that they don't have to come back to us. So because it
Well, why do
becomes
we
one
even have the
project,
wording, Greg?
I guess that was where I was going last time, was I thought it needed to be a condition, but the wording is fine too, if as long as we condition it that that vending window has to.
Or do we need either, or do we need nothing? Knowing that they have to come back no matter what.
Well, I guess I'm more concerned about the May in the back. I don't really care about the back window. I guess they were committing last time to do something with the front window. This is why we had them put it on the plan.
Okay,
I think we're covered, to be honest, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll draft, you'll see the draft decision, the draft condition. I'll come up with some language, Greg, that can be wordsmith to deal with that.
Yep. No, but that's good, because then at least the language on the plan commits you to do something to the window. I'm
I
less
think it
concerned.
might say something that, you know, it's anticipated that changes to the bank building will be made, including the windows. You know, the board reserves the right to determine whether the change is a minor modification, and if it is, it can proceed that way, you know, and then kind of go on from there. So kind of memorialize that you anticipate changes, but you'll determine at the time whether they're minor or major or not.
Okay, yeah, I think that's covered. Anything else from members of the board?
No,
So Brian, did you say these may get updated based on final engineering comments or the site plan? Or
Well,
the-
the site plan might, these might too, because what Dan does, he kind of includes the site plan in his architectural plans.
Okay, but you were gonna review them like the easement and stuff, so.
Yeah, I'm gonna show you that in a minute. Yep,
Okay, thank you.
that's a different plan.
Yep.
Let's find the right sheet here. Hang on a second. There you go. So this is the detail. I'm gonna blow it up in a minute, but this is the Wakefield Municipal Gas and Light Department easement detail. And then this is an easement for the town of Wakefield for the cultural exchange. So if you kind of blow this up, I think the look at it on the plan is better. So let me see here. Yeah, so this right here is, see this little box? Proposed easement extension? That's what the town wants to be able to get access to connect their existing easement. The way, I think what I explained before, this is the town's existing easement. There was a gap right here. So we're filling that gap so that you can actually get from the town's easement on the property to the back of the cultural exchange. And we had a site visit with Bill Renault and the owner of the property. We walked it with our engineer, and that's what they came up with. And Bill is fine with that. And then the municipal gas and light easement. 1 second. So this shows the municipal gas and light easement. So we're giving them a pretty big easement. It kind of comes all the way back to the back of the building, and it's this hash line. So it goes all the way down the alley. You can see the electric line coming off. So what they have to do is, and this is a big help to them, they have a transformer on our property, which they really shouldn't have. Because we have registered land, so they can't get any prescriptive rights. It's been there forever. It serves all these buildings. It serves this building right here. It serves the cultural exchange, and it serves the property at 377 Main Street, which you guys just did the sign on the Albion Street corner. So what my client has agreed to do as part of the project he's gonna give an easement to the Wakefield Municipal Gas and Light. And it's gonna allow them to put our transformer here, which is gonna serve this building and our new building. But then they're also gonna be able to put a phase one transformer back here. And this transformer is gonna serve all of those other properties.
And the easement out to Chestnut Street gives them access to it.
Yep, see the electric coming in, Dave, the E.
Brian, don't those transformers inhibit access to the cultural exchange building?
No, the sidewalk to the Cultural Exchange building, Chip, is gonna hug our building.
So we're just giving them sidewalk, not truck access or.
No, it's
dock
walking, so,
access.
yeah, correct,
Okay,
correct.
just walking access.
That's it. That's all they have. The town currently has a 5-foot easement. What we are gonna do as part of our plans is we're gonna build a sidewalk and we're gonna put the granite curbing and make it all handicap accessible.
Thank you.
It's a real win for everybody. So that's that. And then Bill Renault had sent some comments. I mentioned that earlier. I'll tell you what we have to do. I got these today from Bill. It was actually from Tim Wilson, but wants to update the plans to show the Albion Street layout, including the landscape bump out area. Reconstruction of the sidewalk and driveway apron on Albion Street should be avoided because it's been done. They don't want us to touch that, so they want us to update the plan. Update driveway detail to be consistent with the town standard, including a 4-foot wide pedestrian access route. And then he also sent the later email for further improvements on the sidewalk on Chestnut Street. I had mentioned that earlier.
Okay, so we don't have this yet, Brian?
No, that has to be done. We just got those notes. Those were kind of like his final comments, Dave, that he wants. He's fine with the site plan. That's just the stuff that he needs to have added.
Okay, no, we got an email from Gail today on 10 Broadway, I believe, from Tim, but not this project.
Yeah, there was no email to you. There was no memo to you. It was a memo. It was just a quick email to us like, hey, we don't have time to do a memo, but to give you a heads up, these are the only 3 things that we're gonna want to see added to the plan.
Okay, we'll make sure anything we get gets out to the board. And Brian, if you can add those to the plans.
Yeah, we're gonna add those, Mr. Chair, and then you are going to get a final memo from DPW prior to the next meeting.
And
After,
you said TAC as well?
yeah, you have one from TAC, which you haven't had a chance to read, but I said it's pretty clean.
Any other questions or comments? Does that complete your presentation, Brian?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this case? Please raise your hand or make yourself known. You can use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. Seeing none, I'll close it to public comment. So next steps, Brian?
Next step, we'd like it
Well,
to,
Mr. Chair, I would suggest that we ask Brian to draft a decision that we can review, draft an O&M plan that we can review, and conditions report that we can review.
Right, incorporating anything, Brian, that came in through TAC and DPW.
yes.
Yeah, Gail and I got a couple of really late ones today, like right before the meeting. So I know people haven't seen those.
No, I think that's the punch list, Mr. Chair, in addition to the things that come up tonight, updating the materials page, as we noted. And the final engineering letter we need, the TAC letter we need. So that sounds like the list from my notes anyway, as well.
Excellent.
So the signage, sorry, just want to make sure. So the signage, you just want signage for the main building for now and then approval for the next ones later, or?
No signage. We're gonna, you know,
I think we want to see signage as a full package, and we're just, as part of the decision, we're gonna retain the right to approve those at the board, through the board.
we'll bring it back, Dan, at a later date when we're ready to do signage.
Understood.
Okay, take the motion to continue, I guess, then.
Brian, September 13th.
Yes, please.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, I move that we continue this matter to the September 13th hearing.
Seconded,
Okay, regular voting members, Dave,
Yes.
Joe,
yes.
Chip,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes,
and I vote yes.
Do we need to extend the time to render a decision?
Nope, you're all set till October 31st.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we did that last time, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, next case, cases 2339, 2340, 2341, 2342, New Creek LLC, located at 10 Broadway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, for the record, Attorney Brian McGrail representing New Creek. With me tonight is Donnie Lowe, who you've met with New Creek Development. Also, John Ogren is here. We have James Emanuel, our landscape architect, and Brian O'Connor and Chris Santoro are here, architects from Cube 3. The last time we met on this, there was a consensus of the majority of the board, not all, but I think a majority, to move forward with the project and to work with Mr. McBain in an effort to finalize the plans. So we've since that last meeting with the board, we've had an opportunity to meet with Jim at least 2 times. We have provided him detailed sections of the building, which I submitted to the board for the record, and Jim has reviewed, and you can hear from him in that regard, I'm sure. And one of the charges in particular from the board, Kasumi had mentioned this, and I think Joe Pride, was an effort to try to dress up the Main Street side of the building, to look at putting some balconies on it, and to give it some dimension in that regard. And also to kind of look at different options for the entrance of the building, which we have had the opportunity to work on that with Jim McBain as well. And we're going to present those to you tonight as we go forward. The board also wanted certain questions answered. One of the things that came up at the meeting, and we talked about it, was that on the request for the balconies on the Main Street side, the fire department had not seen that, and you can't drive around to that side of the building. So we wanted to get back to the fire department to let them know that that was being considered by us and the board, so that their memo would be reflective of the plans that they, might be the eventual final plans for the project. We didn't want to get to a point that when it goes to a building permit, the fire department says, where did these come from? We didn't know about them. So we had a meeting with the fire chief and deputy fire chief. We presented the balconies on that side of the building, and they had no issue. And they've issued a new memo to your board. Chief Sullivan sent a memo confirming that fact, that the meeting had taken place and they had no issue. I brought Jim Emanuel tonight because there's been some discussion on the landscaping and the ivy that we're proposing along the parking detail on the bottom of the building, and the ability of that ivy in the winter months and how much it would flourish for sunshine, etc. So Jim Emanuel's here to address that and give the board an update on that. You also received a TAC memo on this today. And I think it's pretty clean, and you certainly can determine that on your own. They've asked us to make a contribution to traffic at Main Streets and work on those signals, and also for the potential left-hand turn that's going to happen, hopefully happen from Broadway onto North Ave. So they've recommended a $50,000 contribution from my client, which my client agreed to with the TAC. You did get a DPW memo there's some stuff that they're looking for drainage calculations that John Ogren is aware of and will be working on with DPW. So you don't have a closeout memo from them yet. And I also, before we get into our PowerPoint presentation on the architectural aspect of it, John, could you give the board an update on the Conservation Commission, where we are, since it's jurisdictional with them, please?
Certainly. So we met with the Conservation Commission last night. They're essentially all set. I asked them about whether they needed any more info. They said that all the requested information had been provided to them. They're essentially holding the hearing open just to have us finalize with DPW. A couple of comments that came back, that we just got that letter last night. So they're just kind of holding it open for us to kind of close that out. And they should be able to close the public hearing at the next meeting, which is the 5th, September 5th.
Great, thank you, John. So with that said, we've submitted all of our plans. We have a PowerPoint presentation, which is consistent with the plans that were submitted to you. And we'll get you a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. If I could, and Donnie, am I going to hand this over to Brian? I think I am. Here he comes.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Can everyone see my screen? You guys good?
Yep.
Okay, great. We're gonna go through fairly quickly tonight. We're gonna start with John, who's gonna talk through some changes to the site plan. Very quick discussion on some of the architecture revisions, discussion on the landscape, and then Brian, Mr. McGraw will wrap it up. So we'll start with the site plan, and John, if you could talk quickly about the changes here, that'd be great.
Certainly. So we had submitted to the zoning board revised site plan, the site plan set, revised stormwater management report, and basically both of those reflect, we had never really updated the site plan as far as changes, the building changed, the parking layout changed. So we went back and revisited in terms of the grading, utilities, that type of thing. Obviously, we reworked the drainage. So it's not, the layout is the same as we've been discussing in previous hearings. It's just we're basically adding more detail to those site plans, and those have been submitted to the board.
Great, thank you. On the architecture side, Mr. McGraw mentioned quickly, there are sort of 3 quick things we're going to touch on, and I'll just jump right into these. The first is the elevation along Main Street, as Mr. McGraw mentioned, in the larger white area and in the wood tone area on the right-hand side. We've added recessed balconies to create a little bit more texture, a little bit more rhythm along that facade, and to kind of break up some of the visual volume of those areas. We think they do quite a good job. We did also, as Mr. McGraw mentioned, meet with the fire department to review those, and I think we're in great shape on those. Along this elevation, we also made some changes to the podium and the material conditions at the lower level. In previous iterations, the wood slat treatment at the lowest floor kind of extended around most of the building. And one of the things we've done here to make this sort of building feel like smaller chunks is allowed the darker material in the form of masonry there to come down to the ground to create more of a visual break along the ground level and sort of use a different variety of materials at the ground floor exposure. This is a quick view along. You can see there's a key plan in the lower left, and this is a view from Broadway Street of the current massing configuration as we stand now. This is a view from North Avenue. You can see the main entry to the building on the right-hand side and some of the garage screening under that volume across the main public park on the corner. This is a blow up of the park area on North Avenue. We can talk a little bit more about this in the landscape section, but you can see there's been significant effort here to really create a rich landscape from the sidewalk edge back to the building edge, and to really take advantage of the overhang condition there as well, with some green areas and some hardscape plaza. This is an aerial view from the Crystal Lake side. Here you can see some of the sort of slat wall fence along the edge. You can see the adjusted volume from the last iteration, and this is just kind of showing where the building form is at this point. This is a little bit of a closer, more elevational view of the Main Street elevation, where you can see the depth and the read of the balconies as texture along the edge. On the Main Street side, down low, you can see on the right-hand edge, we sort of have that ivy growing on the screens at the lowest level, transitioning to a slat wall, and then the darker material masonry coming down to the ground, then the slat wall again. So we're really trying to create a lot more rhythm and texture along the street edge. Looking in more detail at the, and again, the key plan on the bottom there, looking at a little more detail at the dog walk area, you can see the slat wall on the property line to the right, with ivy growing in there. And you can see a little bit more of a detail on what the vertical wood slat feature looks like as it screens the podium. And the idea here is to keep those tight enough to prevent animals from going into the garage, and at the same time provide a little bit of openness to the garage while really creating a very sort of visually solid screen wall to the garage condition there. This is a quick view from the rear parking area, looking across that outdoor space. Again, Crystal Lake would be to the left in this view. You can see the little red arrow on the bottom indicating the view angle. And the screening on the garage you can see in the distance at the lower level of the building, as well as the outdoor area on the roof for the roof deck. This is a quick view of that amenity courtyard. Again, I'll direct everyone's attention to the small key plan just to orient yourself in the lower left. We're looking directly away from the lake into that inside corner amenity area. Again, there's been some discussion here, and we're happy to talk through it a little more in the landscape section. We think, even though it's not a gigantic area, we think there's an opportunity for a tremendous amount of richness and life in this area. And this gives you kind of a pretty good idea of what we're thinking in that location. Mr. McGrill had mentioned one of the other things we talked about with Mr. McBain was the idea of kind of creating a little more focus and a little more obviousness at the entry, the main entry to the building, which happens in this lower triangular section. What we have are two quick options. This is option one. I think it's our preferred option, and it brings some of the warmer wood-like material down into the masonry, creating a very vibrant and bright sort of entry condition for the building, with integrated sconce lights on either side, an illuminated canopy projecting out over the sidewalk area, and then flanking trim on either side of that main entry that also injects some warmth into the middle of the masonry around the edges of the windows. There's another option, and what we've done here is we've sort of integrated a darker brick on the edges of the windows. You can see on the right and left-hand side that has a textured pattern to it, which is really, really quite nice and adds some richness. And then a canopy that is a sort of a gray tone, again, projecting out. This one happens to be cantilevered with integrated lights, held back with ties and integrated lights below. This is a little more understated, in my opinion. I think we probably prefer the other, but we did want to share both of those options for discussion with the board. And then the last thing we wanted to review quickly on the architecture side, we're not going to try to go through these in detail, but these are a sampling of some of the wall sections and details that were reviewed and hopefully approved with Mr. McBain. We wanted to just share some of the work that had gone into these as well, to make sure that we were being very clear about all of these conditions. View from Main Street that's been updated to show the changes in the ground plane and the balconies as well from the last iteration. And then a view from the other direction where you can see the shadow and the texture that's added by the balconies in those sections. Mr. McGrail, I'm happy to wait till the end to field questions if that's okay, and we'll just jump right into the landscaping. I think you're on mute.
Do you want us to go through landscaping, Mr. Chair, and then we can field questions on everything?
Sure, sounds good.
Thank you. So Jim, you're up.
Great, thank you, James Emmanuel here, landscape architect. As you can see from the renderings and the perspective views, the trees, which are shown in the plan view as the green circles, are fairly prominent visual feature when viewing the building from the ground level. So I think those are really one of the main features of what we're doing here, is adding the tree canopy throughout the site. You can see the amenity area is the one back by the Crystal Lake, and the larger amenity area that has the circle paving space, again covered by trees and plantings in the approach. And really the balance of this has not changed the layout since the last configuration, but we have been working together to look at the way the landscape will coordinate with the building and the green wall, kind of the geometric wall formation. We've now really looked at, we've taken Chip's concerns about the using a deciduous vine into account, and are looking at using a more of an English ivy or Baltic ivy as the evergreen vine that will do that covering and form that pattern that you saw in those previous versions. So you can't see it in the plan view here, but when you look at the lower level of the site of the renderings on the building plan, you'll see those green screen squares, which will be covered by an evergreen vine, which will tolerate shade and the conditions, New England conditions, in fact, will stay evergreen throughout the winter and be able to be pruned and maintained in those shapes. It'll take roughly 3 years for them to establish to that level, but after that, it's fairly vigorous and probably have to be cut back and maintained at that rate, but something that's certainly achievable. So that's where we stand with the landscape plan. We've got native trees in the buffer zone area. I know that's not necessarily your concern, but we did go through that with conservation. And we've got a bunch of evergreens and other ornamental plantings throughout to help green up the space, especially in that front kind of semi-public courtyard area, which will soften that paved space and I think give a nice approach and entry to the building.
I think we talked about it earlier on. It's a very robust landscaping plan. There's a lot of plants and a lot of trees going on a lot that's totally paved right now. So it's going to be a significant streetscape improvement from a landscaping perspective. So if I could, I guess, ask Mr. Chair, since we've worked with him multiple times, if Mr. McBain could provide his comment on his
No, I
report.
think that'd be appropriate. Thank you. Jim, do you have anything you want to add?
Jim, you're on mute.
And if you could stop sharing, it might make it easy for us to see each other have a conversation. And we
Sure.
can always come back if necessary, if someone wants to point something out.
There you go.
Sorry, my mic was off. I'm very happy with the way this has progressed at this point. I'm happy with the option 1 with the entry. I think that's a light idea as opposed to something that's a little heavier, a little darker. And bringing that wood down the building, I think, is an excellent idea on this project. And I did ask Jim to be at this meeting because I figured there was going to be questions about the landscape that we haven't asked before. And I do have one, which I brought up at the last meeting, but it was not able to answer it only because he wasn't there. But it's the planting that's under that pointed element over by the circular piece of architectural landscape, basically. And how is that stuff going to survive under that building in that area? I don't know whether whether there's some sort of lighting going in there, or it's just expected to survive on natural lighting.
Yeah, typically in a situation like that, we'll use plants, if you think of an interior landscape, there are plants that thrive in low light conditions, and there are similar plants for the exterior that will thrive in low light conditions. The bigger concern I would have would be the lack of water because it's, you know, not going to receive any rainfall, but we've noted in the plan that all the landscape areas are to be irrigated. So that's not going to be a concern. And we would use plants like the ivy itself will tolerate dense shade. It actually grows in dense forested locations. So that's not going to be an issue for that plant. And there are other plants as well that will serve as shrubs that will survive just with the ambient light that they get underneath that canopy as it's shown in the renderings.
Thanks. So the other piece I think is that shows up with this is the balconies that have come out of previous discussions with the board. And I think that's helped as well, give it, as pointed out, additional texture, not just colored texture or materials, but really sort of just a pockmark of architecture basically in this thing that breaks a larger surface up into smaller surface. So this is working out very, very well in my mind.
The balconies, are they glass, Jim? You know, I haven't checked my notes. Are they glass fronts? For like the railing system? Do we know?
I forget right now, quite frankly, but our client can tell us.
Yeah, I think we're proposing a perforated metal mesh. So that, you know, the problem with the glass is they're really too hard to clean effectively. And I think in the renderings, the metal mesh, it's quite transparent. It's very see-through, so it looks like it's not really there at all. And I think one of our concerns is making sure that we don't end up with a maintenance problem on the building.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, because it looks like on the rendering it was glass, and that was going to be my question about maintenance and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
All right, thanks. But since I still have the floor, my other question or comment, actually, I do like option one, just to start with that, and also looking at the renderings of the aerial view, there seems to be like a lot of roof. Have you guys, I don't know if we've mentioned this, but have you guys thought into solar panels at all? If you even have any room with all the equipment going up there, is that something that you talked about? I mean, I'm one way or the other, it doesn't really matter to me. I'm not pushing it, but if that's something that you guys talked about.
Yeah, I think we're not proposing that right now. I think one of the, you know, the condensers tend to get located towards the center line of the roof so that the residential condensers are not visible from the ground and they live over the hallways. And so what that does is it really kind of leaves you the perimeter, which is very inefficient. And since we are spreading the condensers out and keeping them low, I think it's probably pretty challenging to get any kind of an area for solar. We've looked at it on other projects in the past, so I think
no worries. I saw that and it popped in. I just wrote it in my notes. So that's all.
Absolutely appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
The other thing to that end as well is we haven't seen any of the venting piping. Are you planning on putting all the dryer vents, bathroom vents, everything through the ceiling? Or where are they happening, or do you not know yet?
I'm going to ask Mr. Santoro from our office if he knows it. If not, we may not just be prepared for that at this point. Chris, do you know where they're going?
Yeah, I don't think we've talked about it honestly. So
Okay.
I think we don't know the answer.
So upon moving this forward, we would need to know all those answers.
Absolutely.
Because we need to know what the final thing is going to look like.
Yep.
If it moves forward.
Certainly the preference would be on the roof. It just creates a lot of noise on the facades with all the vents, but if that's the more practical solution, we just, as Chip said, we need to know.
Yep, understood.
Well, the good thing about this building, it's so tall that anything you put on the roof is the line of sight is pretty much nil, right? I mean, it's a 5-story building. I know you mentioned everything in the center, which is great, but you do have a lot of room to push things out, I'd imagine. It's such a tall building. Just thought.
But to Chip's point, we'd want to see everything, right? I think Chip, mentioned the venting, but it sounds like you have talked about condensers or something. So I think it's not just, we want to see everything. And there will be. Yeah, and there is other, they may not be as tall as this, but there is other, buildings around there across from Main Street that will offer at least a little bit of a view. So some sort of hiding or screening, or if it is all the way back, would want to understand that.
Understood.
I think, that-
I have
right. Oh, Scott, go ahead.
I have a question on the landscaping. Are you introducing any like path light or bollard or anything throughout the landscaping?
We don't have any bollard lights specified at this point. I'm not sure. I think on the civil plans, we've done a photometric plan that John Ogren from Hayes Engineering has provided for this project in the past. But we don't have any, specified bollards per se yet at this point, no.
My another question is on the amenity area in the both landscaping by the lake and also by the building. It looks like they're open towards the west. Is that gonna be in the sun like from the noon to the sunset? Would that be like too hot in the summertime? You had like pergola, but it was against the building, and I think you had like grading station towards more like the parking spot. Would that be like that's gonna be in the sun like all afternoon? I assume.
Well, I think there'll be a mix of sun and shade at different times of day throughout the day until, it's a tall building, so it's going to take probably till after 1 o'clock, based on the exposure for the sun to kind of come around. And when it does that, we've got large shade trees that are going to be planned for that location. So when, if you were to recall the rendering that showed the approach to that amenity area, you would have noticed the trees that are all around that. So that'll give some degree of shade, and there'll be some areas that will receive sun, just like in any location where there might be a variety of trees planted at a certain interval on center. There's going to be some times when the areas will be in parts of the areas will be in full sun, but it's really, I think, a blend of all those conditions of shade in the morning, typically sun probably in the afternoon, although, when the sun gets low, I'm not sure if it's going to, at what time it will set below the adjacent trees and things, but I think we've got a good mix, and it's not entirely exposed to just heat and sunlight, in addition to the, canopy features that we have, the pergolas and things that we have on the site too.
Okay, thank you.
But Mr. Chair, through you, just to Brian's point, have we actually seen the lighting plan? I'm looking through the site plan and the architecture, the files that I have. Have we actually reviewed the lighting plan where there's going to be parking lot lanterns and, entrance, lights?
Not that I can remember, Dave.
Yeah. So is it on a plan and we just haven't gotten to it yet?
I'm
Or we
gonna ask John to respond to that.
I think it was sent to us on that last package on Friday, but I don't think we went through it online.
We submitted a photometric plan which laid out the actual lights, the location, the fixtures. There's some that are going to be mounted on. There's some throughout the parking lot on, basically on poles, and then there's some that are mounted along the building, on the face of the building, shining out towards like that, into that like amenity area, kind of in that triangle there. So
Do you have it? Can we share? I mean, we just got a Friday. I'm just not seeing it. Do other board members remember seeing this file? Did I not?
Last page.
It's yeah.
PH1.
Right.
yeah, I think
Well,
it was the last.
We haven't gone through it. It's
Yeah.
been presented at a meeting.
Right, we usually would do that, so.
Okay, I stopped at the detail page. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we had submitted a photometric plan a while back. It was essentially, and I believe we did talk a little bit about the fixtures. Obviously the layout has changed, we updated the layout of the actual locations of the poles and the lights on the building. trying to remember what was this. We actually discussed this actual feature, the actual fixture and what the board thought of that.
I mean, this also doesn't take into consideration anything in the landscaped areas or the circles or to Katsumi's point, you know, the other areas. Is this all the lighting that's going to be outside, or all of a sudden the trellises are going to be lit? And what are we talking about with the balconies and, you know, entrance lights into the building and those type of things? I think we need a whole lighting presentation.
Well, we have identified lights along the building at the entrances, at the garage door entrance, another entrance over here. There's an entrance out front here. We are showing down lights along this section here, and then in that triangular section, this fixture B1 is recessed in those areas that overhang. So that's essentially what we developed as far as the lighting goes.
So there's no other lighting other than this being presented or being considered at this time.
Correct.
For all these fixtures dark sky compliant, I didn't see anything. I might have missed it, but I didn't see anything noted on the plan or anything talking about that.
There is a need for some sort of accent lighting, particularly around the front entries, basically, and just to pull off the front at night, particularly during the winter or other times, basically, where it's maybe some uplighting on the trees or something else will accent this space from Broad Street.
That still doesn't answer as in whether it's dark skies compliant, though. Just because it needs accent lighting doesn't mean it needs to be as bright as can be.
So what I'm hearing, Brian, if you could talk with the team and come back with, you know, answer Greg's question, possibly look at accent lighting and do a more full presentation on lighting next time. I think that would be appreciated by the board.
Understood.
And Mr. Chair, I had one other question too. Last meeting I had asked about, I think we're still at 28.8% open space. Last meeting I had asked if we could look into it. I mean, we're so close, 1.2%. You know, if we can get, I think we ask all applicants to come with, asking for as little relief as they need. I haven't heard any of that touched upon, whether that was actually looked at to try to gain 1.2% somewhere. I know it's a big lot, so 1.2%, is probably more of an area than you would think, but it's, from what I can gather, that wasn't explored.
John, can you address that?
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, 1.2 doesn't sound like much, but this is a 99,000 square foot lot.
No, I just said that it might be bigger, but have we even explored it? It's, it's not going to be a tiny corner of a lot, but we asked that it be explored, and
yeah, it's
instead
almost
of just saying it's a small
it's almost
lot.
1,200 square feet. And really, we did look at it, and anything that we were going to do, we were going to lose parking spaces essentially.
All right, I just ask if if we ask about it, that it be addressed in the presentation.
Yep.
Could always lose some building.
So Brian, has the power company chasing your client at all for charging stations?
They require it now. Yeah, they've made that a requirement.
But we don't know where these might be at this point.
Well, they'll be in the garage, so, we can spec the location if you want us to.
Oh, I was thinking more they'd be outside, but okay. Whatever.
I think they should probably be called out on the plans, Brian. I'm agnostic to where they are, but I think if it's a requirement of the light department, we should call them out.
Yeah,
Brian, what's the requirement? Is that one?
I'm gonna look it up. That's a good question. Hang on a second. I'm gonna be able to give you the answer on that, Joe. hang on a second.
While he's looking that up, I'll respond to what I think about the entranceways. And Jim, I guess I'd like your feedback. I think they're still horrible. I mean, I don't like either of the choices. I mean, we've got a building of 106 units, and we have still the MGH ambulance drive up entrance. I mean, I just don't think the entrance does anything for the building. And I know my architectural taste is in my mouth, but I mean, am I way off base on this?
Well, I think, you know, it depends on how much activity happens behind the glass as well. You know, you go to MGH and we see a bunch of nurses and patients sitting around. On the other hand, if there's activity going on inside, that's part of the activity and part of the action basically that makes an entrance. If it's just dull, like trucks parked up against it, you're right, it is.
This is an apartment building. How much activity is there going to be during the day?
Depends on what you program that space for, really. I mean, look at the old mill building, what they do on the first floor. Basically, they got their mailboxes, they got sitting areas, they got Wi-Fi. You know, there's a bunch of stuff going on in the mill building that we saw after they got through that just induced that area. So we don't know about what's going to happen in that lobby, and I doubt whether they've thought much about it at this point, but that's only part of the picture. Obviously, the front's the other part. And if you look at how the wood trim around the windows works with the entrance on either side, it has a textural flow towards the entrance. Now, you may think that's not enough. That's in your mind. I think it is.
I mean, I don't think number two, the second one does anything for the
Oh, no,
building.
second one's terrible.
Right. So I guess if they wanted to go with one, they did a great job by presenting something horrible as number two, so that everybody would pick number one. I don't think Dan would ever think of that, but
we all know that people have done that before, yes.
I'm with you though, Chip. I agree on that comment. But if that's it, Chip, from you, I had one other comment too. Going back up to the rooftop, you said with all the condensers and equipment's going to be up there, you're looking at noise levels because you're pretty close to the property line over there. Hopefully someday something's going to take the place of that used car site next door. So if there's residential there, we're going to want to make sure that the noise emanating from your roof is compliant with our noise ordinance. And
I can assure you that it will be. These are residentially sized condensers. And, you know, even on a 2 or a 3-story building with a flat roof center loaded, you cannot hear them from the ground. So.
what about from a building of similar height next door?
I mean, it depends how close you are, but you know, you'd have a minimum code separation of 30 feet. If you're standing on the roof of a building of the same height next door, looking at the unit 30 feet away, you probably would hear it if you're standing on the roof. But I don't think any buildings are designed to deal with noise in that particular way. They're really generally targeted toward the public realm and the ground level where people who aren't living in adjacent buildings are. And you know, when we've done these types of studies, the sound levels are effectively zero from the HVAC on buildings of this type. We're not doing large scale condensers on the roof. So.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah. Sorry.
One comment I just like to make is make sure you show where your elevator override is, because, you know, that's a projection that's certainly going to be a lot higher than these condenser units, which are not that big, and they're just one unit at a time, and they generally don't make much noise. But on the other hand, the elevator override does sit up there predominantly above the roof.
Will do.
Dave, did you have something?
I did. So just on the parking, I note that on the parking calculations, you know, you're meeting what's required by the bylaw, and 6 of those spots are designated handicap some inside, some outside. What I don't see is any designated as visitor parking. And I think it's important that some get designated because I don't know where visitors would park. And if we don't designate at least some small portion for visitors, they will get consumed by the residents, either by right or by some additional fees that the owner tends, to charge. But I'd like to see some commitment to put visitor spots either out front. I assume they're not going to be in the garage, but out front maybe. But I think they should be designated so that visitors do have a place to park on this property.
To your point, Dave, I think the other thing is that we run into instances, and we should bring it up now, where there's a charge for parking in a building or under a building. And all of a sudden, nobody that's in there basically wants to pay that charge. So everybody parks on the site or out in the street or somewhere else. And we need to make sure that parking is free across the whole site, whether it be under or outside, so that there's always parking available.
Right, and that can be addressed in the O&M plan. So it's there for perpetuity.
Well, they should know now what we expect based on our.
Right, no, but that they can outline their plan in the O&M plan.
Mr. Lowe, did you have a comment?
I do. So typically on our multifamily projects, we do charge for parking, and it is one method to limit the amount of cars. If it was free parking, folks tend to bring as many cars as they want. So this is actually part of our pro forma, and it is an important part of pro forma because it is a income generating item. So what we do find is when we charge, and we can manipulate the charge to control the amount of cars on the site. Obviously higher cost means sometimes we stagger the cost. First spot is X, and then the second spot is X plus, to try to minimize and reduce the number of cars on site. We also get into programs where we have rental cars on site, or make deals with like a zip car kind of companies to reduce their overall parking. But it is an important part of the pro forma that we'd have a difficulty just having free parking on the entire site. Now, we have encountered this same kind of question at other jurisdictions, and there's always concern about people parking off-site, but that is policeable, and with proper signage, people do not do it. They get one ticket, and that's it. They don't do it again. They live right there. They don't like the tickets. So we haven't had a problem with that.
And what jurisdictions would those be? Because I'm finding that hard to believe.
Well, we've been working with Framingham, and they expressed concern about we're adjacent to a public park, and they're concerned we would park, the residents would park in the public parking lot. But they understood, and they actually suggested we're going to police that. We'll put signage up, we'll start ticketing, and it won't be a problem.
I'm having trouble understanding. How do they know the parkers would be to ticket them that they're in your building in Framingham?
Well, the concern is our residents would be parking in public spots, and what they've done is they limit it. You can't park overnight. They would set all the rules so they would catch anyone abusing the parking.
With this project, you're not going to park on Broadway. Can't park there. So, there's really nowhere you can park if you're not.
Oh, the other parking lot,
All
park
the,
at the DPW. I mean, there's
the Galvin.
Up Main Street too. Yeah, there's areas, if you're motivated, you're going to find a spot that you don't want to pay for. So I don't know. We're going to have to chew on that one, I think.
the other thing. I'd like to-
I mean, it's
Yeah, the other thing
interesting.
I'd like
It's
to
interesting,
mention-
Mr. Chair, because, you're familiar because you're in Cambridge and Somerville. I just permitted a project in Somerville and we reduce they want us to reduce the parking on site. They don't want parking on site in Somerville because for exactly what Don is saying, and I know we're not Somerville, but that's the new planning that's going forward with, and you know it from being in the city, that the theory is Don is saying, the more parking you make available, the more people are going to bring cars. And the deterrent is some of this project in Somerville, they wanted us to lose the parking because they said, if you have parking, people are gonna have cars. We don't want them to have cars. We want them to take public transportation. This is within the railroad district, which is, the reason for the density that's allowed with these projects within that distance. And so, I think.
I hear you, Brian, but a lot of that discussion in those types of cities is they're getting rid of their parking ratio so they can add more units. They want housing density, and they don't want to be held back by parking ratios. So some of it isn't all about, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. And the other thing they use it for is to prevent commuters from bringing their car, not people that live there. So a lot of it's aimed at people coming in and out of the city for work. So I don't know. This is, I don't know if anyone else has any comments. Greg, I don't know if you were about to say something. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, I guess just on the opposite of what Mr. Lowe said, they wanted to reduce, we want any parking that is associated with this on the site and not elsewhere. And I guess I would agree with Brian, if the MBTA wasn't reducing their service to our area and redoing the bus route, I think the access on the commuter rail, the schedules haven't gone back up to where they were before. It'd be different if we were on, say, the red line or the green line or something comparable to Somerville or Cambridge that you mentioned, but we're just not. I know that the MBTA is increasing, with the MBTA Communities Act, but this isn't comparable to. I don't have the experience in permitting or even policy that Brian or Tom do in those areas, but having lived in the city. Sorry, Matt's iPhone just popped up. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Having lived in the city for quite some time before I moved here, it's just it's a totally different atmosphere. We don't want to push anything off site.
One of the things I was going to mention, Greg, is, we have the shuttle service being talked about up at Quantapowhat. This group should absolutely start talking to them about how to become involved in that as well.
Yeah, and Erin should have that information. I think she might have made a presentation to something recently. Maybe she talked to in our subcommittee or something. I can't quite remember, but she talked about it recently somewhere.
Yeah, Donnie, if you had others examples, I don't want to put you on the spot here to bring back other than Framingham that are more similar to Wakefield. It would be interesting to hear from you on that.
Yeah, or can't you tie it into the lease, a parking spot with the lease and have the leases be different or something?
Typically, we do have, it's an income generating item. So when they sign a lease, they would purchase or lease a parking spot as well, one or two. I just wanted to point out, we are meeting the 1.5 ratio, which it complies with the parking code.
As long as people can park in those spaces, it does. If you're charging for it and people decide not to use them, it does not. So it's perceived those to be free available spaces, not box spaces.
We've not had problems with people avoiding the lease charge. It's not a tremendous amount of money. They pay for that convenience, especially at these rent levels. They're not.
We have had problems, though, is what we're saying, and I think Brian can even tell you exactly where we've had those problems. Might not be at these lease levels, but we have had major problems, especially in one specific area using that. So it's not that we're just harping on an issue to harp on it. We have had real documented problems.
Yeah, I think we can talk about this as a team and come up with some ideas.
Yep, that sounds good, Brian.
I don't think it's something we're gonna solve tonight.
Oh, tonight, no.
I agree.
So, So.
All right.
And-
But,
and-
Mr.
and I've
Chair-
dealt- I've got some ideas I can talk to Donnie about that I've dealt with on other projects, so.
But
Go ahead,
Brian, through you, Mr. Chair, Brian, I just want to get a response from you or the team that the team's committed to designated some spots visitor. I don't think I actually heard an answer. With it diverted into like this other discussion, but I just want to make sure some are designated visitor and the team's willing to do that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm good for now.
You define some, Dave?
Well, I don't know if there's a ratio. I mean, you've got 6 handicap out of the 159 is, there's,
Are
I
you
don't
gonna be satisfied if they designate 2 as visitor?
no, I think it should be at least
Okay, there you go.
4 or 6. I mean, the team should look at it as a
And
ratio.
we're gonna look at
Yeah.
the global parking issue here. And-
Yeah.
But like the ones on North Ave that we recently permitted, those are like what, 28 units and there's 2 designated visitors per building, right? So, 1 every 14 or 15 units, whatever that might be. But just as an example, there has to be some reasonable ratio. So that, again, for X number of units, there's 1 visitor spot available. And those need to get policed too, because you can't have residents parking in the visitors, which I think has happened in some areas. I've noticed it
We
in some.
already have people parking in handicap spaces at buildings.
Right, so it becomes a policing unit situation, maybe as part of the O&M or for the, Donnie, for your team or whoever's managing the property day to day, making sure people are parking where they're supposed to be parking. And, residents aren't using visitor parking because they don't want to pay for their own, that kind of thing. So it's an ongoing thing, but appreciate the team looking at it.
Okay,
Chair, can I give you an answer on the EVs? The electric vehicles?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that okay, Mr. Chair?
yeah, please do.
Okay, yeah. So I was wrong. They sent the memo out, the light department, and what they said is it says WMGLD is requiring electric vehicle charges to be metered separately from all other meters. Even if your building will not have electric vehicle charges initially, it will still be required to have a dedicated meter for EVs. So I was incorrect. They're not requiring EV spaces. They're saying you've got a meter for them. Dawn, do you, if you can answer the board, do you usually have EVs in your projects, the charging stations?
We do.
Okay.
We do. It's actually a company design directive to have EV charging stations.
And any idea how many you would have on a project of this size? Just to,
I'd have to look.
we'll look at that as part of the whole parking thing.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing I would add, Brian, is we got correspondence very late from, TAC, from DPW and the fire department. So I'd like, for next time, I'd like the board to be able to see those and to read those and, leave that open for comment for next meeting as well. I'll work with Gail to make sure that all the members have those. And a quick question on the fire department. That letter from Chief Sullivan was dated August 8th. And you said you went and talked to him about those balconies. Did you talk to him before he sent the letter or after? Because I scanned it quick. It's a couple pages. I don't see him referencing those balconies in his letter. And maybe it's a non-issue for him, so he didn't.
Dawn, when did we meet with Chief? I'm gonna look. Hold on. I think he sent it like the same day. We met
It was
with
definitely
we met with him.
after the meeting.
Yeah, we met with him. I think we met with, what's the date of the letter, Dave?
It's August 8th.
Yeah, I think we met with him on the 9th. So I don't know if he just misdated the letter, but he sent it, I think, that day that we met. Because I got a copy of it.
Okay,
So, oh, no, the plans you have, he saw.
Okay,
And so did it was not just him, it was also Deputy Chief Purcell that participated in that meeting as well.
okay.
Yeah, and that was the purpose of the meeting, was that we wanted to make sure that, yeah, so he sent that letter to me. He just misdated it because he sent it to me. He copied me on that letter on August 9th at 3:44 p.m.
Okay. I just want to see, I want board members to know when they read the letter, whether or not that was included in in the meeting that you had with him. Okay,
We met with him at 11 in the morning and he sent the letter at 3:44 in the afternoon on the 9th. He must have just dated it the day before by mistake.
okay, last call for the board, comments, questions? Yeah, I'm gonna open up to the general public. Is there anyone here that would like to comment on this case? If so, please use the raised hand function on Zoom. Okay, not seeing any, I'm gonna close public comment for the evening. So for next time, Brian, looks like we want a conversation on parking, maybe a quick presentation on lighting, what we talked about, maybe some accent lighting added.
Mhm.
See if members have comments on the memos from TAC, DPW, or the fire department. Anything else?
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I'd like to see a final landscape plan and a final, he was like, it might be Baltic ivy, Boston ivy. What is it gonna be? And the bushes underneath that triangle, what are they gonna be? A final species. Because today, Emmanuel kind of was vague in some areas.
Jim, you okay with that? I had a note on that myself.
Yeah, we certainly can provide that information on the plan.
Just a revised landscaping plan, Jim, with a revision date with the details that Mr. Tavel was talking about.
Yeah, actual species and sizes and all the regular stuff, Jim.
And Brian, if they can update the, renderings, we talked about the elevator override, what the rooftop's gonna look like, where the vents are. There's still several items out there.
I got the list. I'd like to, with the board's permission, I'd like to start drafting an O&M because you've got a lot of issues here with. That I'd like to start at least getting a draft for the board to review instead of throwing it to at the last minute to you and to start to just to put some of these conditions just as placeholders because I think there's going to be a lot of them to deal with. So I'd like to start kind of putting that together as in a form of content for the board. It's kind of like a working model as you go along. If that's okay.
Yeah, if you think that would help put the issues in a.
I think it'll just keep it organized.
Yeah, exactly. Clear and organized and concise would be helpful.
Yeah. And then is the board okay with option 1 on the entry, or do they want further exploration on that? Where are we with that? So we're not wasting time.
Yeah, I heard Chip and I don't know if anyone else wants to comment. Jim seemed to be okay. Joe or Dave or Kasumi, Greg?
I was fine with it.
Yeah,
I'm
same.
not an architect.
I like the option 1.
Same.
Okay.
I'm buying an ambulance. I'll be all set.
Okay, I think we're ready for a motion to continue.
Yeah, thank you for all the feedback. Helpful.
Mr. Chair, I move that we continue this hearing to the September 13th meeting.
Seconded.
Regular voting members, Dave,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Chip,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes,
and I vote yes. Matters continued to September 13th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along, cases 2370, 2371, 2372 A&E Realty Trust, 460, 466, and 472 Main Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Attorney Brian McGrail for the applicant. With me tonight is Steve DeFuria from Phoenix Architects. Just kind of an update on this project. We've worked with engineering. We went to TAC, so we're done with TAC. I expect a memo to come out. As you know, we've worked with Bill Nadeau in TAC on the Envision to make that work. We didn't make the cut for the memos. The other ones barely did. They got in under the wire tonight. But this project didn't make the cut for the memos. But so I know the board likes us to come back with substance, but we're not going to really waste a lot of your time. But Steve really made some made some progress with the architecture, especially like on the sides of the building and stuff. So he really wanted to present this to you tonight to make sure that you think we're going in the right direction on that in case he has to continue to work on it. So I think, Steve, I think you're going to be fairly brief, but at least you're going to kind of get maybe a little feedback from the board. Does that help?
Yep, no, absolutely. Appreciate it, Brian. Again, for the record, Steve DeFeria representing Phoenix Architects. So just kind of a brief, I know it's been a little while since we've been in front of you guys. In terms of layout and building wise internally, everything's still the same. So on the ground floor, we still have 6 retail spaces proposed, 22 parking spaces in the back. On the upper level, on the second floor, we still have 16 units, 2 1-bed studios, 10 1-bed, 4 2-bedrooms. The units in the back here, the 4 units that incorporate the step down in the building are the townhouse style still. So on the 3rd level, those have a 2nd floor. And then everything in terms of appearance for the building conceptually, still the same from the last time we were here. So still looking at least on the front portion of the building, a little bit more detail in terms of window trim, crossheads with the keystone, and I'll get to more in depth on those details in a minute. The center windows, we ended up keeping the arch, just something I think to help anchor the center of the building, both on the front elevation and also on the courtyard side there as well. Everything else, again, for the most part, same concept of most of the detail happens in the front. Then as the vision from North Ave, Main Street starts to fade away and you get towards the back of the building, that detail starts to fade off. In terms of window trim, the cornice detail and the parapet starts to simplify a little bit. Again, I'll start to walk through those details in a minute. And then in terms of renderings, I know we started to show existing streetscape, now starting to show the proposed, and started to look at a couple different angles. Those still are the same from the last meeting. But what we just started to focus on is more in-depth details. So looking at the various window details across. So again, as we mentioned, the windows in the front, starting to incorporate a crosshead detail with the keystone, actually finding a product for that, starting to size out, 1x4s on the sides of the windows, a historic sill on the bottom. Then as you start to get to the rear, that crosshead detail starts to go away, but still starting to keep a little bit of that detail with like a bead at the top of the window trim. Thicknesses and stuff still stay the same. And then just looking at the arch windows, again, carrying over that keystone detail, starting to highlight that, and actually incorporating a molding detail around the edge of the window trim. Again, just trying to give it that old world, historic, traditional feel. And then starting to just cut through sections. So looking at the parapet details. So everything in the front of the building is actually at a 3/6 parapet. So starting to think ahead in terms of condensers, venting, all those things will start to be hidden behind that parapet wall. Starting to look at the banding detail at the retail, both just generally in terms of trim, but also, as we mentioned, at the signage, having uplights there. So starting to incorporate, I'll just start to zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. Starting to create a little pocket for a cove lighting there that starts to uplight the signage. Zoom back out. And then again, starting to look at the parapet details in the back. So you can see a little bit smaller of a parapet wall. The trim starts to become much less layered. So it's just a single piece of trim with like a freeze board and then just doubling up the trim at the top. So something super simple at the back of the building. And then starting to look at as well, the spacing of the brackets, both in the front of the building and as you start to wrap. Each of the spacing kind of starts to float around the 4'3", 4.5 foot dimension. Some of it kind of all depends on the elevations and how long that cornice detail starts to wrap. But again, most of the spacing as you go around the building for the brackets is the same. And then starting to put a materials board together. So starting to pick out a hardy plank product for the majority of the building, a hardy panel smooth for the retail area, starting to pick out a lighter gray and a black for cornice detail in the trim, the lighter gray for the banding for the retail, picking out a black window And as I mentioned, a crosshead detail with a keystone, the bracket up above at the cornice, the banding at the retail is a much smaller bracket, but again, something a little bit more traditional. And then looking at the dental molding that exists at the front of the building, actually picking out a trim product. So Acre is actually a synthetic wood product, so it's low maintenance and it's sustainable. It actually takes the black color a lot better. We've used it on a number of projects, and the black's actually held up well, versus paint and AZAC where the black will start to bubble. So just something in terms of maintenance, picking out a product, picking out a lantern fixture that is accent lighting on the building, and then signage. And then you can start to see how some of those materials start to come together in our front graphic. So that's really it. I think most of the focus was just on details, cutting sections and materials. We are in the process, as we do, just getting a box together a sample. So once we have all those samples in place, we'll bring those down to the building department. You guys can take a look at it. So happy to answer any questions you guys have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. That
Mr.
is for
Chair,
tonight, Brian?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
That's it for the presentation?
That's it. Yeah, I'm happy, I know it was kind of quick, but any
No,
initial,
that's fine. Just want to make sure.
yeah,
So
any
now I can-
initial comment, Tom, that the board has or
Yeah.
constructive criticisms to just kind of keep Steve going in the right direction?
Sure, Chip?
yes, Steve, if you can put up the rear elevation again. So here's what, maybe that's the rear. So these windows are all very, very basic. Go to the one that also shows the rear entrance. And maybe I'm just not reading it right.
Yep.
That's in the
Yeah,
alleyway.
That's in the alley, Chip.
Right, but from the parking deck at an abutter, you're gonna look at this elevation, right?
No,
Well, okay, so this is coming down I guess my question is on the back building. On both the rear elevation and this alleyway elevation, the windows are very, very plain and simple. Is that on purpose? Is it a cost reason? I mean, I look at the front and it's great. The back looks like a box with no excitement at all.
Yeah, so it's kind of what you hinted at is cost, I guess, is one where trying to simplify the detail, but it's also vision as well. So what we just started to look at is this left elevation is going to be more apparent from Main Street. This you're probably never going to notice from Main Street unless you're physically pulling down to the building. We dressed up the courtyard area just for residents who are walking in there, just kind of carrying that detail in. But yeah, it mostly just comes down to sight lines of what you'll actually see. We're kind of thinking of it from the public realm. Everything that's going to be seen from Main Street kind of carries the more intricate details. And then what's either up against another building or you'll never see unless you're physically inside the property. That's where we're kind of phasing the detail.
I think you need to look at, and maybe you need to superimpose it a bit. You got the parking garage. I don't know whether the whole back end of this is against the parking garage, but it's close. And there is a slight separation, at least down there now, between the building and the front face of the parking garage down there. But I wouldn't want to maximize the windows looking at the parking garage or vice versa for that matter. And this has sort of been, the back end has always been like this warehouse type of thing. So I'm not so chagrined with seeing the back end of this building be less than maybe what happens at the front. But certainly coming down the alleys and having a more grandiose opening down here to the apartments, and the rest, the other half of it basically being parking, more utility and space, basically, even though there are units there. But I think until we clearly understand where the parking garage is, what the height of the garage is in relationship to this, and you're looking at a concrete piece of junk back there that basically has been there for quite a while. So I say to answer Chip's question to some degree, I think we need to know more about how this butts against that garage and where are the plates of that garage in relationship to the back edge of the building? And where are the floor levels of that parking garage? Because I don't think this building deserves much attention at the back side because it's wasted. Put the attention towards the front.
Can you do like colored elevations of all four sides of the building? It might help, like different colors from the front side to the back side to help a little bit, that the back side doesn't look like two box like.
You got a point, basically, because if it's more residential looking or different, basically wrapping around in like a U around the building, and then the back end more is utility space, parking, like a warehouse facility, which it was, and you're just mimicking some of that. I think that
Right,
that would be interesting.
Is the warehouse facility is now parking and 16 units.
Yeah. And
The
it's,
majority of this project.
and you know what? It is what it is. I look at it more as a little bit of history in place.
Yeah, I think we can certainly look at all four sides kind of in color. I think the initial thought for us was the siding color would maintain, trim and everything would maintain. It would mostly just be detail. So again, kind of giving back to what's there now in terms of some of the details in the front, less in the back, but still trying to make it, I guess, to Chip's point, one cohesive building that has 16 units throughout.
Okay, anything else? Anybody?
I have one comment. I think I made this comment on the last meeting, but have you looked at the location of the handicap lift inside on the ground floor with how the egress stair door opens in the, I think you have the main electrical room door opens against the lift?
Yeah, so I guess it depends, right? Because you're either putting the swinging door against the stairs, which is probably going to be used more frequently than the lift, or the door is going to swing into the lift. So I think just thinking in terms of where the entryway is from the courtyard, the stairs away from the elevator room made sense. That was just our thought process. Some of it has to do with the existing building as well, kind of where that step down happens, working with the structural grid line. So we're kind of held a little bit to where that transition point is. But that was kind of the thought process there. But I do remember we had a conversation about the door in relation to the lift.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else?
Nothing for me, Mr. Chair. It's headed in the right direction, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the big message, and again, this is kind of the purpose for being here, and thank you, is to kind of look at what's happening in the back of the building and how it relates to everything, what's going on behind our building and how it also works with the front and sides of our building, right?
See, if you look at what you got right in front of you, is in the background, you see if assuming this is right, the building behind it is about a quarter of the way across the length of this new building. And the parking garage probably goes about the center of this building. So there's a right-hand section of the back of this building, which I don't believe is up against the parking garage. But until someone studies where the parking garage sits with this building in plan, and even in elevation, we really don't know what the situation is, the full situation is behind this building.
Yeah, I know, I think looking in plan, Jim, from what I can remember with the site plan, I'm pretty sure this edge here up to the property lines, I think it's like 2 feet. I know we have, where the building starts to jog in, we have a little bit more breathing room. I
Yeah.
don't know what that dimension is off the top of my head, but we can certainly just explore that condition there and see if it has any impact on the architecture.
I mean, you're right. I think it is very close to the property line, but I'm not sure that it's up against the parking garage. The other one, I'm pretty sure.
Hey,
it is.
Steve, can I share my screen for a minute?
Yeah, I'll stop share, Brian.
Can I help? So actually, Jim, I think the parking garage goes all the way. Because this is our building and the garage is here, see it?
Oh, yeah, okay,
So that really,
see it.
that tells you what's going on back there.
yeah, okay, so it does come right up. So that secondary section that projects out is really, the windows are probably right on the parking garage.
Yeah, and we tried the windows in the back, just in terms of height, try to bring those a little bit shallower. I think they're floating around like 3'8", 4 feet in height, with a pretty high sash. So again, just thinking in terms of sight lines back there, obviously trying to give some privacy to the residents.
And where that other section jogs in, where there's a little more space between the properties, it looks like there's striped parking there today. Is there proposed to use that? What's the use of that? Anything?
What's that right here, Dave?
No, like between that parking ramp on the other property, right down there, there's a white truck. See that
Yeah.
white? Yes. That's an alleyway and there's actually striped parking there today. I don't know what its use is really practically, but I'm just saying in that area, is anything being proposed to be done back there?
The name?
No.
That's used as the building to the left, I think, if I remember right, when we did the parking garage, I think there's like a mechanic or a electrician or somebody that parks his vans in that alleyway.
Yeah, HVAC guy or something, a plumbing.
Okay, there's
whatever.
somebody, right?
Yeah,
I don't even know how's he get that truck in there?
He
Backs
backs
it
it in down next to the other building from
Oh,
that.
right through here, Chip?
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
But
that's
it's this
not even,
property. It's this property?
Don't
Yeah,
know
and
whose
the
it is.
property, the pitched roof that's right there just beyond the truck is the old armory building that's still there. That's the armory building right there that was preceded the current armory. That's why the roof is pitched, because at one time that was their marching area, basically under that roof.
Okay, Jim, I'm asking about the use of the space behind that main building right there where the white van is.
Yeah, I know, it's just an alley.
I gotta look, Dave, I'm gonna try to get I'm gonna make a note to kind of look at our site plan, how that works.
Okay,
You know what I'm saying? Because I don't know whose property that is, how far our property goes. I'm
okay.
wondering if he's on our property.
No, I don't believe
No,
so.
because we talked about this with that other project that remains nameless.
if you can just confirm that though, Brian.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at the site plan, Mr. Chair.
Because I know on the calculations we're a couple shy, and if that was usable and could have some exterior parking, I mean, it just may help, that's all, if it's just.
Yeah, I think Dave, at one time we had looked at trying to get 2 parking spaces there. I think it's just the right of way of getting back there, just not having the clearance.
Okay. But it's worth looking, as Brian said, just look at the site plan, see what that area, who owns it, and if anything could be done. That's all. It's just worth confirming, I think. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, any other comments from the board? Questions?
Yeah, I got a question. You guys aren't gonna charge for parking, are you?
Garage.
Just a question. I don't know. You don't plan on, right? Since
I think we're just gonna have to look at our parking, so I don't, I gotta talk to the client about that. Well, we gotta look at the parking.
All right. That's it.
Okay, and then Steve, you've heard the other cases. You're advancing this. People don't want to know what the rooftop looks like, where the vents are and all that stuff and lighting and.
I think I got your answer, so I think that is not our property. our building is like right on our property line. I think that van's back in this area.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It
Yeah.
does. Yeah, no, it's answered. So it's just, that was striped for somebody else's use at one time, however it's being used today. Yeah. Okay, thanks for confirming.
Okay, if there's nothing else from the board, I'm going to open it up to the public for comments and questions. If people do have comments or questions, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen on Zoom. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment for tonight for this hearing.
Mr. Chair, I move that we continue this hearing to the September 13th, 2023 meeting.
If I may, Mr. Hatfield or Mr. Chair, I'm thinking we should skip a meeting on this.
You think you need more time to come
Yeah,
back?
I don't think, but we got Labor Day coming up. I don't have the town memo, and I don't want to waste the board's time, and you're gonna have a pretty full agenda for the 13th anyways, with some of these other ones coming back. So I just want to have a realistic appetite for that date. So I would respectfully suggest to push this to the second meeting in September.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Chair, amend my motion to continue this hearing to the September 27th, 2023 meeting.
Second in the amended motion.
Regular voting members, Dave,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Chip,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes,
and I vote yes. This is continued to September 27th.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
All right, on to new hearings. Case 24-5, Lindsay DeTono at 211 Lowell Street.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I'm Lindsay DeTono. I'm the applicant and property owner of the residence at 211 Lowell. Assessors map 14, lot D16. I'm coming before you as I'm looking to widen my existing driveway by about 9 feet. Article 6, section 190 of the bylaw states that driveways shouldn't exceed a width of 20 feet in residential districts without a special permit. And the proposed driveway widening would exceed that dimension. If you don't mind, I would like to share my screen.
Please do.
Show some photos on the property. Okay, you can see this okay?
Yep.
So 211 Lowell Street, we are at the corner of Lowell Street and Walden. And this is our property, but we're specifically looking at the driveway within the green circle here. The existing condition is the driveway is currently the curb cut driveway width is about 25 feet. You can see our garage, where the garage sits, it provides a pretty shallow driveway for us to park within. And this is the entrance that's primarily used to enter our home at the back. We're looking at Walden Road driveway here. Our driveway is not. And in the red dashed lines, you can see the sidewalk that goes through our driveway. And frequently we have a lot of residents in the neighborhood that walk along the sidewalk, and they have to kind of dip down into the road and back up into the sidewalk. One specifically that's elderly and has a walker. And every time I try to kind of figure out what we can do to make this better. So we're looking at on the right, you see here, we're looking at just widening the driveway by about 9 feet so that we can easily access the space that's paved that we could use to park within if we had that access a little bit easier to get in there. And you can see it would open up access throughout of the sidewalk without any obstructions and having to kind of come down our driveway apron and back up. So a little better view of this is just through photos. You can see this is our existing driveway where we park our cars. We can really only fit one car comfortably in our garage with our loading our kids in and out with 2 cars doesn't work in there. So we usually have 1 car in, 1 car there. And sometimes we kind of make this maneuver to get the car in there, but it's not an easy maneuver. It's kind of a bit inconvenient and tough to get in there if we're asking others to do it as well. So we're just looking to bring the curb cut back here and essentially create this condition where we could easily park our car back here and then open up this path to let the sidewalk continue through our driveway without having to have them come down and around and back up the sidewalk. The dimensions that we're looking at here, the existing sidewalk is about, like I said, 25 feet in width, about another 9 feet to push that curb cut back would provide us that ease of access into this area here. It doesn't require that we have our cars in the front yard setback at all. And it just keeps that sidewalk open and kind of makes it easier to get in and out of our driveway there. That's really all I have. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Hey, board members, questions, comments?
Have you talked with engineering yet?
I spoke with not engineering, I spoke with the building inspector just about getting this application in. We were going to be doing some work on the driveway, and obviously contractors not going to be touching the curb, which is not theirs. And it sort of became apparent that the special permit is required. I haven't spoken with engineering yet. I assume this would be the first step.
So Chip, I have a letter from them I was going to read after.
Okay, because I'm sure they have requirements or such that, I mean, this looks perfectly fine to me, extremely reasonable and actually very nicely considered for the neighborhood. So I have no problem with it. I'm sure they're gonna want to either reuse the granite or have some sort of requirements of how to do the work.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak with them. I'm actually a civil engineer myself, so I do this type of work pretty frequently. So certainly would be open to having that conversation with them.
Okay, anybody else?
No, I have no problem with it. Chip, same thing. I was wondering if town wanted to get involved and do it the work themselves, or they were just, if they had no problem with the homeowner picking out a contractor. That was my only concern. But I have no problem with it.
Hey, Mayor, Tom, can you read the letter or just
Yeah,
so we
yep.
may hear what
Absolutely.
engineer has to say? Sure.
Two letters, one from the Conservation Commission from Rebecca Davis. On behalf of the Conservation Commission, I've reviewed the application submitted to the Board of Appeals for a special permit to widen the driveway at the subject address. It's been termed the subject site is not within the commission's jurisdiction. However, the commission recommends that the applicant adhere to good housekeeping practices during the execution of this project, particularly in regard to the drainage inlet structures and catch basins located near the intersections of Lowell Street and Walden Road. The catch basins discharge directly into the Saugus River, approximately 280 feet northwest of the catch basin. The Saugus River is protected tributary to the public water supply. Thank you for your opportunity to comment. And a memo from Eric Sherman, civil engineer. DPW Engineering Division has performed a review of the July 18th application about this project. The application was submitted by Lindsay Detono, included the following documents: plan of the land showing proposed driveway widening plan. We offer the following comments. By widening the driveway, the applicant will be the most impacted from the loss of on-street parking spot. If the board chooses, secondly, if the board chooses to approve this special permit, the applicant's contractor shall be required to file a right-of-way utility permit with DPW Engineering prior to commencing construction. The entire driveway apron and sidewalk along the apron shall be removed and replaced with asphalt and brought to current ADA PROWAG standards. As part of the application, a grading plan shall be provided for review and approval. And that's what I have from correspondence from town departments. Any other comments or questions? Lindsay, could you stop sharing? Because I'm going to open it up to the public to make it easy for me to see if someone wants to comment. Are there any members of the public here that would like to comment on this application? If so, please use the raised hand function in Zoom. Seeing none, I will close it to public comment. Pleasure of the board.
I would only, we can condition special permits, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would just suggest that we approve this and make her meet all the requirements that engineering is asking her to do.
And make a note also of the Conservation Commission's comments.
Yeah.
Are you making that into a motion, Chip?
I figured Dave would.
I will, just, okay. All right, I will move that we grant the special permit pursuant to 190-31 A. 31 C1, sorry. To allow the proposed widening of the driveway as shown on the plans. Plot plans dated June 28th, 2023 and July 13th, 2023. With the condition that the applicant adhere to the conditions proposed or put forth by the engineering department and the Conservation Commission.
Seconded.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, regular voting members, Dave,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Chip,
Yeah,
Jim,
yes,
and I vote yes, that's unanimous, and the special permit is approved. Good luck with your
And
work.
I'd like to say, Tom, is that she can come in front of us anytime. This is the most quick, professional, individual person that has ever presented to us in my 17 years. So thank you.
Thank you very much. This is
Maybe,
simple.
maybe Mr. McGrail can hire you.
Yeah, if you're looking for something part-time, talk to Brian.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Good night. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, moving on to other matters. First one is 200 to 400 Corner Power Parkway, minor modification.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Attorney Brian McGrail here for Cabot and Forbes. With me tonight is Matt D'Amico. He's back on. He was having some technical difficulties. And Allison Desbonnet is here. She's our landscape architect with Copley Wolf, and Allison's given testimony to the board in the past. What we'd like to do tonight is we're requesting a minor modification only as it relates to landscaping matters. And I also would like Matt to give an update to the board on the status of the project as long as he's here, because that was one of the requirements when the board had extended the special permit timeframes, that within 6 months they wanted an update, or you wanted an update, I should say. So Matt's prepared to do that, and he's prepared to come back whenever you want throughout the project to provide updates. So I think I'd like to deal with the landscaping aspects of it first, if that's okay with you. What we're requesting, as I mentioned, is a modification to the landscape plans that have been approved. The landscape plans were modified back on March 8th, 2023. So we're looking to further modify them. And really what the modification request involves is a changing of the species and where they're going to be located. The quantities of the plantings all net remain the same. So they're consistent with what was approved on May 8th, 2023 modification plan. The reason for these modifications or adjustments is because now that we're getting close to this, Copley is looking at how these species are going to relate to soil samples that have been taken, real sunlight considerations that they've now seen on site, and site-specific planting conditions. So they're looking to really just move around plants from where they were and kind of switch them out for species that they think are going to be more appropriate and are going to thrive in those specific areas. You know, examples of the conditions are sun exposure, as I mentioned, soil moisture and screening requirements. Another thing that the plan is looking to modify is that the fence that encloses the dog park, we're looking to increase that from 4 feet to 5 feet to provide greater security, to discourage larger breeds from jumping over the fence. And we're also proposing some new locations for the transplanted trees. As you know, we're saving a lot of trees on site. And Allison is relocating some of these trees in areas of least disturbance based on review of the phasing schedule that's now in place, to make sure they don't get moved to an area that then they're gonna get disturbed again. So they really, to their credit, Copley Wolf is really, spending their time on this to make sure that they get it right. I'm gonna bring up on the screen an example of how this has been done. So what we've done is we've categorized the trees and the plantings on the site. So you'll notice, for example, and this is part of our submittal, the deciduous trees. What was approved on March 8 was 116. We're remaining at 116. We're just changing some of the species. We're reducing some and increasing others. Ornamental trees, same thing, 70 to 70. Shrubs, 2,353 shrubs on this site, and that's going to remain the same. And then as you know, we have a lot of perennial grasses and ground covers. I mean, the number of plantings is mind-boggling on this site, 5,302, and that will remain the same. And then we have our conservation plantings, where we've, again, remaining the same all the way down. And I do want to point out that we went before conservation, and they have approved the changes to this. So it's already gone before, and we've got a correspondence from Rebecca Davis, a conservation agent. That's correct, Matt, that the Concom voted to approve the proposed changes.
That's right.
So it has been before them and it's been approved. And you can see these numbers stay consistent all the way down. So no changes, just more consideration and diligence on what's going to survive and where it should be located. As part of our submittal, we submitted a detailed revised landscaping plan, which I can bring up, but you probably saw it in the submittal. It's like 10 pages and it's detail of where each and every one of these plantings is going to go. So I think I covered that. Matt or Allison, do you have anything you want to add to what I presented? I mean, we're all here to answer any questions that the board might have. Anything, Matt or Allison?
I don't have anything else. No.
No.
Allison, did I miss anything, or is that kind of a nice footnote version?
That's a good footnote version. Thanks, Brad.
So we're happy to answer any questions that the board may have, or we can bring the plans up on the screen if you'd like to see those, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, maybe just stop sharing for now so I can, we can
Yes,
see
sir.
each other and have a conversation.
Yep.
Any comments from members of the board or any requests to bring up any of the plans?
So I looked at them all, Mr. Chair, and I have no problem with them. And I personally don't think it's the last revision. Because when reality hits, they're going to want to move some stuff around or maybe change species again. The biggest thing for me, this is not, we often look at minor modifications to say, is there cost savings? They're keeping the same numbers. There's no cost savings here, really. I commend them for doing the work on sun studies and soils and all of that. There's a ton here. Whether, we have one species or the other, nobody's going to know the difference. They're keeping the numbers the same. This is not a cost saving thing. If the numbers were changing, I'd be concerned. I'm fine. I'm fine with where they're, I think the locations that she's putting the transplanted plants, they have the trees, they have a better chance of surviving. Because there'll be less construction or root damage on them. All good, but I don't think it's the last time we'll be hearing, because reality compared to plans, on a project this size is going to change a little as well.
And that's just in the landscape. Probably there'll be issues with the architecture that we'll have to deal with, but we've done this before, so we know the drill, just as the client knows the drill. So with that, just a footnote here is I had reviewed the permit drawings at the building department, basically. And as far as I'm concerned, the permit drawings architecturally basically are fine. I just came across this little bump And with this approval, basically, that bump goes away. And so I'm ready to sign off for the board with the permit set, assuming that we get the sheets of drawings that are in the sets already down there switched out with the approved set of this meeting, if that's where we're going.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, sounds like we're ready to move forward with this.
And by the way, the spreadsheet was extremely helpful.
I worked all week on it.
And I know McGrail had nothing to do with it.
I emailed it.
Yeah, there you go.
And he presented on
Latest Friday deadline. So they're asking for a minor mod.
Yeah, what's the date of the updated plans? I, for the life of me, can't see them.
Oh, Allison, can you help with that? They're
They're opening in a PDF form with all the
plan
common
set.
tables on it.
Allison,
Yeah,
what's the date on those?
Yeah, I have it dated for today, the 16th.
okay. Skip me. Notes. Okay, so Mr. Chair, I move that we find that the landscaping updates presented to us in the plan dated August 16, 2023 are deemed minor modifications to the existing special permit that we have approved, based primarily on the fact that the plans continue to show the same volume of landscaping and plantings, just changes to species and counts and locations. And that's the motion.
Seconded.
Hey, any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, regular voting members, Dave,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Chip,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes,
and I vote yes, it's unanimous.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you
So
for the detailed filing.
Thank you very much. And
Thanks,
so
guys.
the other matter for Matt is, and Matt will address the board on two issues. One, the board may recall that there was a comment made to me to contact Cabot and Forbes on the signage on the construction fencing that's up and down 128. So Matt's going to talk about where that stands as far as getting rid of that or alleviating that. And then he's also, if he may, Mr. Chair, update you on the status of the project.
Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you. So in regards to the site signage and the site scrim, there was some Callahan scrim that was on the 128 side. They got about halfway through today in removing that Callahan scrim, and they'll be done with it by end of business tomorrow. So that will all be gone. It'll all just be black scrim across the whole project, and there will be as there is today, a small Callahan sign at each of the site entrances, the gates on the property. So that will be removed by end of business tomorrow. In terms of just general construction updates, demo permits for the project were issued at the end of July. Architectural demo, or really the interior demo of the building, is complete at this point. The asbestos remediation, as well as remediation of other hazardous materials in the building, is also complete. If you were to go out there today, you'd see that the entire single-story volume on the south side of the site has been demolished structurally. A great deal of the site pavement has been demolished as well. And we have weekly walks from a conservation perspective, and weekly reports that go out to conservation in relation to all the site activities that are going on. So moving forward, we have about 4 more months left of this demolition process. We're slated for just before Christmas to finish demolishing the existing building. And we'll be moving into foundations shortly thereafter. So we have a whole ground improvement system. There's challenging soils at the site. We have a whole ground improvement system that will begin in January. That'll go on for the next couple months after that. But on the whole, we are still slated to have first occupancies in 2025 with a complete project occupancy towards the end of 2026. I'm happy to answer any questions, get into any more detail on any other part of this.
Matt, are you recycling on site? Are you
Oh.
grinding concrete on site?
We are going through a process with DEP to do so, yeah.
Okay, so you're not trucking anything yet?
We're not trucking anything yet. There's a whole sampling program we have of all the building materials. There's certain materials that obviously have to get exported due to the fact that we put them back into the ground. But anything that's clean, DEP typically allows to be reused and turned into, essentially soil.
Yeah.
They do have a large soil pile on the parking lot side. They also have a fairly large, it looks like aluminum or sheet metal on that same side, and then they're shaking out the rebars on the west side. So it's very active over there right now, and there's at least 5 loaders over there dealing, basically either chewing the building up or breaking it down over there. So it's very active. Matt, one thing I noticed, there's a lot of vehicles are not paying attention to signs, and they're coming all the way down to that west gate and then said, oops, I got to turn around. I don't know what you can do to be short of flashing lights basically in their eyes, how to get them to read a sign. I assume that they can read, but probably doesn't bother you as much as them.
Yeah, it's a good point. I wasn't aware of that. I'll talk to our site super who's there every day. I'm sure he's noticing it and just not telling me. And we'll come up with, see if there's anything we can come up with. There's probably just better signage we can get out there.
Thank you.
1 or 2 of those was me just checking on. Going down there to see what was going on.
No, you gotta walk.
Well, part of it is you could put the sign in the middle of the road because it's way off to the side and you could easily just go right past it. And that would probably help.
Which you did.
I mean, I drove down there with my kids in the car, is how wide open it is.
Oh, I see. You just want to show them all the Tonka toys.
They could care less.
Matt, any surprises yet? Anything big? I know it's a loaded question, but any big surprise yet? Or
I mean, it's construction, so there's always surprises. But no, I mean we've been ahead of schedule on each part, so we've been able to overcome whatever challenges we've had. The site, just again from a geotechnical perspective, is very, very complicated and very costly. So there's a lot of we've just been doing a ton of testing out there to anticipate any possible issues that could be coming up.
Hopefully you don't find Jimmy Hoffa.
maybe they do.
All right. Well, thank you for the update. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Do we, Mr. Chair, will you just let us know when you want another update? I just don't want to neglect the board. Or do you want to schedule an update or?
Well, it sounds like you're going to be in the same type of phase till around Christmas. So it's maybe at one of our December meetings, just to check back in. Sounds about right to me.
I would say it would be interesting to me, Mr. Chair, if they came back when they were going from one phase to another, like when demo was complete and then they were starting foundations.
Well, that's why I picked December, but it's December. So whenever, if you fall behind a few weeks, if it's the first week meeting in January, right around.
I think they're going to be ahead. If it takes them, I saw how fast they got the 1-story down. It's not going to take them till Christmas to get the rest of the building down.
We'd be happy to come back during each of these phase changes. Happy to do so.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, 62 and 76 Foundry Street, 62 Foundry LLC, looking for a minor modification.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Attorney Brian McGurl representing 62 Foundry LLC for a minor modification. I'm going to share my screen if I may. What we're simply looking or requesting to do is to relocate 2 parking spaces. Not reduce parking, but just relocate. So to orient the board, and I'll tell you, why we want to do this and where we want to put them. This is the project on Foundry Street, and this also has Maple Street access. During the hearing process, we showed on our plan that there was an existing easement for the neighboring property right here, this building. They had an easement that went right over our parking field, which was like the worst place for this easement to be, for them to access their property for access purposes, maintenance purposes. The building is part of the my client actually improved their whole building and painted it, so it's like almost brand new now. It looks great compared to the way it did if you go down there. So the easement originally was where our parking spaces are, and this neighbor was very cooperative and supportive of the project. And so what we were able to do is we were able to relocate the easement. This shows 20 feet wide right in where our driveway is. So now it doesn't affect the parking. The civil engineering mistake on that was that we had 2 parking spaces right here that blocked anywhere to get to the property. So the easement went through the 2 parking spaces. So the simple revision that we're looking to do is to take these 2 parking spaces and move them here. There's room to put them here. So now this would be open. It leads to nowhere. It leads to a building, but it complies with the easement. There's no change in the parking. So it's a pretty simple, simple change. It has a little impact on the open area. It goes from 15.4 to 14.3 because this is going to remain pavement, and then we had a little green here that abutted the railroad that is going to be taken up. So that is a request.
Questions, comments from the board?
Seems like a reasonable solution to this situation. Seems fine to me.
Fine with me.
Okay, I
I
think,
think, this project is hasn't moved very much. You're gonna start seeing in the next, you're gonna see this taken off pretty quick at this point.
good.
That's good to hear. It changed ownership, right, Brian?
It's in the process, and this is one of the things that we needed to get, this was holding up the closing, so.
Okay.
All right, they're looking for a minor modification.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we find that the proposed parking changes as noted on this plan dated July 13th, 2023 are deemed a minor modification to the previously approved special permits granted by this board. And that's the motion.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Regular voting members, Dave,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Chip,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and I vote yes.
Thank you.
Brian, real quick on that same topic, obviously voted on it, doesn't really have anything to do with the actual modification, but so that was holding up the closing. It's not that we shouldn't expect now that it's changed hands to come back for more minor modifications based on the new owner. It's
Not
so,
right.
so it may not start moving very quickly at this point. It may move quickly to come back for more modifications.
I don't think that's gonna happen. That's not what's been presented to me, because there was one other modification that they were considering, and then they decided they didn't need it.
That'd be great.
Good, be good to get that one going again.
Yep. Pretty beautiful building
They need a restaurant over there.
with a nice restaurant. Yep.
But say the same thing, Dave, walk right down there and have a beer.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night, Brian.
You
Yeah.
too. Thank you, board members.
Moving on to the other matters again, 95 Audubon Road, T-Mobile, modification of existing telecommunication facilities.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, member of the board. For the record, my name is Mike Walsh. I'm with J. Lee Associates.
representing the applicant T-Mobile Northeast LLC tonight for their administrative review. T-Mobile is proposing to modify an existing wireless facility at 95 Audubon. The modifications will consist of swapping 9 existing antennas for 9 like-kind antennas, removing 3 radio heads which are below the antennas, and replacing them with 6 radio heads below the antennas. Excuse me. Removing 12 coax lines, replacing them with 3 hybrid lines, removing a equipment cabinet and replacing it with a new one, and a battery cabinet on the existing wall mount. There will also be a modification to the cable run to go to one of the antenna sides. And this installation does not substantially change the physical dimensions of the wireless facility and therefore satisfies the eligible facilities request. I'll open it to any questions if you may have.
Okay, any comments or questions from the board?
None here. We continue to get these at every location.
And we'll keep getting them.
Yep.
Wait till the next generation of whatever it is.
Right. 6G. Something.
Okay,
I didn't see a letter in the package.
no, I got,
Yes, sir.
Gail gave me the letter. We gotta read through the letter to approve this?
Or unless Dave has a copy of an old one that he can. I
Yeah,
don't.
no,
have it with me.
No, I think I can make a go of it.
Okay.
I think it's pretty straightforward. So I move that we find the proposed modifications as shown on the applicant's plan dated April 5th, 2023 by Advanced Engineering Group for the location, the wireless communication facility at 95 Audubon Road. Does not substantially change the physical dimensions of the base station or the facilities themselves in accordance with US Code 1455, and therefore satisfies the standards for an eligible facilities request, and we would grant them approval to move forward.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, regular voting members, Dave,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Chip,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes,
I vote yes. Mr. Walsh, Gail gave me the letter. I've already signed it, and I'll have it back at town hall for you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Have a good night, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
My pleasure.
Not too bad tonight. Next up, 465 Water Street, Dish Wireless modification to existing telecommunications facility. Anybody here for that?
Apologies for speaking on mute.
Okay,
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Yassine Nori. I represent Dish Wireless and their co-location proposal at 465 Water Street. The existing structure is located at 465 Water Street. It's a stealth pole with a height of 75 feet. Dish is looking to utilize the 51-foot RAD center, installing 3 antennas, 3 6-foot antennas with 3 remote radio heads. Dish will also be installing a 5 by 7-foot steel platform, less than 1.5 feet high, to house its radio and power protection cabinets. The proposed installation will not increase the height of the tower. As we're actually installing in a vacated RAD center at that 51 feet. The installation will not involve the installation of more than the standard number of new equipment cabinets for the technology. The modification does not entail any excavation or deployment outside of the current site by more than 30 feet. All of the excavation is going to be hand dug, and it's going to be within inside the fencing compound for utilities. The installation will not add any visual impact. The antennas and radios will be installed inside of the stealth enclosure and will not defeat the concealment elements of the eligible support structure. To conclude, Dish's installation involves the co-location of new transmission equipment, adding of equipment that will not increase the height of the tower or the dimensions of the equipment compound. As a result, the installation does not substantially change the physical dimensions of such tower or base station. Therefore, the proposed installation constitutes an eligible facilities request under section 6409 and respectfully request your approval. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions or comments from the board?
None for me.
All right, hearing none, I think we're ready for a motion then.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to grant the request as presented tonight in accordance with the plans prepared by American Tower dated March 14, 2023, included with this package for the location of the wireless communication facility at 465 Water Street, Wakefield, Mass. This determination satisfies the standards for an eligible facilities request of an existing wireless tower or base station in accordance with section 6409 of the Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Act of 2012.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, regular voting members, Dave,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Chip,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and I vote yes.
Thank you very much for your time, gentlemen.
Have a good
Have a
night.
great evening.
I'm signing your letters as we speak. It'll be down at Town Hall tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
All right, we're on to clerk board comments.
Is Hart's doing their signs finally?
No, Hart's is doing the facial work. And they've got a hiccup on their changing the glass storefronts out, but they, I think that deal fell through, so they're doing something more, but they're starting with the stucco surfaces at this point, is where they are. And they're on Main Street, they'll go down Water Street next.
Courage, much needed.
I have a question for Gail if she wants to answer it.
Sure.
Just checking to see if she was still here.
Yeah, I want
I'm
to find
still
out if
here.
she was asleep or not. Four Corners, have you seen the drawings in from them yet?
No, not the new ones.
Okay, just for everybody's information, I reviewed the drawings and they were a little screwed up. Not so much in the building as in the site work, particularly around the civil side of things. And I talked to Brian, talked to the client. They're supposed to, they sent me a new set of civil drawings that are supposed to be bound in with a set. And I looked at them, they were fine. And I expected within a day or so, basically have them to bind in so I could sign it off. It turns out it taking more than a day or so.
Is that Shell Naria you're talking to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So that, you know, that with the Quanta Powered basically could have been signed off a few weeks ago, but between the two, they've been delayed.
One topic to bring up last night, we had our another MBTA communities subcommittee meeting. I think as everyone knows, essentially what that entails is an area in town where you know, around the MBTA stations will be able to build multifamily up to 4 units by right. Part of that is we are allowed to keep site plan review control of certain of those properties. Although we haven't figured out what, you know, all that will entail. There was, I think I brought this up very quickly at a prior meeting. There was questions around who should have site plan review authority. I was fine with, since it is true site plan review, there's no special permit. If it needs a variance, it would come to us anyways, anything. You know, there was no, well, if it's true site plan review, there is no zoning aspect to it. So with our workload and with the planning, compared to the planning board workload, we had discussed having the planning board keep site plan review authority. Unless anyone here has any different thoughts, I was more than happy to go in that direction. Just figured I would get your thoughts before.
Who has it now?
No one. We're writing this whole section of the bylaw. It'll be a completely new section.
So the only question I have is we currently do almost all the site plan review. They don't do anything kind of downtown or for properties necessarily. I don't know if they're equipped to do it. I know you're thinking workload, take it off us. I just think we're more used to doing it.
So two of the members, two planning board members, Matt Lowry and Jim Hogan, on the committee, and they seemed to think they were. It's not going to be too in depth. Most of it is going to be, I guess, what you would call true site plan review. Just with maybe a little bit of, like, we are allowed to keep a little bit of facade of the building review in there, but there is, if it does have any zoning implications, it would then come to us. But yeah, the two planning board members seem to think that they would be equipped to handle it.
I will just tell you from a historical perspective that the planning board has always tried to get more power.
No,
from
I understand.
That's the only thing I caution you on.
Yeah.
And those two guys have been around a long time.
No, only one of them.
Lowry has been.
Lowry has been. Jim Hogan is new.
Right, but
yeah.
That's all I caution you on. I that's really, but don't worry about our workload. Just put it with who you think is the right people to do it.
Yeah, I mean, in my thinking for this one, with a lot of the what site plan review entails will be spelled out directly in the bylaw, that I didn't really have much consternation about them having it. It's not like it's site plan review in connection with a special permit. Yeah, right. No, I knew that. Yeah, I've watched some, I've heard some comments. No, I understand.
Oh, this comes like when you were still a child. like what they tried to do 17, 18, 19 years ago.
Yeah, I wasn't a child then, but I like it. Thank you.
a young teen. Excuse me.
It's in my 20s.
I guess the issues maybe for me is that is so much of the ball of wax with the site that we're working on, which integrates both the building and the layout of the building within the site itself. Now they've in the past always done master planning basically of an area, a development of single family homes or something like that. And we've been dealing with the bigger chunks from the ground up. And generally, yes, they come through because of a zoning issue, basically. And if they didn't have a zoning issue, then I suppose they wouldn't be for us to begin with. So the real question, I guess, is this going to take some of the control that we have over some of these other projects, or if it does come in as like a 40B or something else, where we end up trying to design it into the community, basically limit the number of parking spaces and lay it out on the site, so it's at least aesthetically more pleasing, not that it's always pleasing, to the neighborhood. Do we end up sort of slicing this bird in half and one party does one thing and the other party does something else? I don't know.
So I would say no, because one, all the other aspects of the zoning, dimensional regulations will still be there. It's not as if these are large, the parcels that are the vast majority of the parcels that will be of the lots that are subject to this are, just your lot, my lot. Not saying your lot is in there, but it's just a regular single family home lot. And coupled with, this only goes up to 4 units. If it's anything over 4 units, it's not subject.
So let me ask a question. Do 4 units have to fit on an individual lot now with all the current setbacks and everything, or do they get a break?
You're talking about under the
right? I have a lot. I want to do this for family.
Yeah.
Do I still have to have a 15-foot setback?
Yep.
So literally, they're not, like you said, and if they want to vary that,
Yeah,
From a zoning perspective, they have to come to us.
yeah, from any other zoning perspective, the only essential change here is that forfeit in this area that's a second part of what we're doing. In this area around sort of the downtown area, which we've carved downtown out because we don't want residential by right. We want, keep it mixed use, but that's another issue. If it fits within every other zoning regulation, and that, that was a discussion point too. Do we want to decrease, setbacks or whatever, parking ratios or whatever? And I don't think there's any appetite, or I don't think there isn't any appetite for that. So it will still fit within all our current other regular setbacks.
And you said up to 4 units or 4 stories?
4 units.
So these are really small, potentially being reviewed by the planning board instead of this board.
Yeah.
But they're in that new overlay district.
Correct.
They're meeting certain criteria for
How
being
big is this overlay district?
It is essentially, it's within a half mile of the downtown of Wakefield Station. There was some thought about, for sort of equity reasons and just helpful for the town in general, for spreading it out between Wakefield Station and Greenwood. But the size, the way that the state drew up the new requirements, the size of the lots in Greenwood are actually bigger, so they would have required even more density to meet the requirements. So that just didn't work out. So essentially, if you draw a circle, it's all within a half mile of the Wakefield Station MBT commuter rail station.
Okay.
Carving out, it's not on Main Street, it's not on Albion Street, because we don't want to impact the business areas.
Interesting.
Because it's all, the reason for that is it's residential by right. If you put any, mixed use component, it doesn't meet, yeah.
So actually, and in that area, it's going to be a very small number that are even potentially going to be able to do it.
I mean, as a whole, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how many lots are going to be able to take 4 units in that half-mile radius from Wakefield Station?
Yeah, I don't
That are
know the actual numbers,
residential.
but maybe a couple hundred.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. So that's when you look at the town as a whole, that's a very
Yes,
small,
yes. Yep,
small area.
yep.
And if they have to fit with all the setbacks and everything else, that makes it even a smaller, you may be getting some 2 families as compared to 4s that meet all the other setback requirements.
And they could go over, but then it's not by right. I mean, the use might be by right, but they would have to come to us for the variance on the dimensional regulations. And we'll be coming to you guys as an official body. I think probably Jim Hogan will present at some point in the near future. To sort of start the whole community outreach. He's going to present to the planning board, because just like any other, this will have to go to the planning board to refer to town council, refer to town meeting.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the update. I trust your judgment too, whatever you think.
Yep. Absolutely.
Anything else? Yeah, Joe and I went to the open space meeting that they invited us to. Not much came out of that. Nothing really big. Joe, you're on there full time though, right?
Yeah, no, they're still trying to get the survey out. I mean, they seem to think they had good response, 150 people. I don't think that's a lot of people, but I guess maybe it is. I don't know. Filling out that survey. But yeah, then there's the bylaw review committee. I think they got pushed till next week. Another subcommittee meeting. So still waiting on that. It's kind of, it's summertime, so everything's kind of been pushed off.
All right. We have 2 sets of minutes to approve from June 28th and July 12th.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the June 28th, 2023 meeting. As written.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
We got July 12th too, Dave.
Mr. Chair, I'm just doing them separately.
No.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the July 12th, 2023 meeting as written.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
All right.
So Gail, I'll drop.
I
the-
would say they were perfectly written if I was doing them. I
Well,
don't
thank
know
you.
about Dave. So I thought they were very well written, Gail,
Why, thank you, Chip.
just a, that's a comment, side comment.
Wow.
You forgot to bring them, Chip.
I'm awake tonight, baby.
I'll drop the
Mr. Chair,
telecom
thank-
letters off in the morning, Gail, because I'm going away. So
All right.
I'll get
Oh,
everything
good for
back to
you.
you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anything else, anybody?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Click leave.
Aye.
Good night.
Thanks.